Hello and welcome back. So, I think it's day 9 of the laser adventures, and the water chiller arrived. I'm pretty happy that it got here this fast. I am not so happy with the device itself because this thing has real noise issues. There's something rattling inside of the case really bad, and the whole affair of the machine is kind of edgy. I don't know, this is between edgy and sketchy. There are a lot of dents in most of the body panels. Everything is, there's really a lot of pressure on all of the parts. It came here completely intact. The packaging was not damaged or anything, but this thing looks like it's been through a car wash or something. Technically, I think it is okay. Looking at the inside from what I can see right now, it appears to be a slightly updated version with a somewhat larger compressor, and I have tried it out. It works. It cools and the pump runs, and the safety features all work, but it makes quite a lot of noise. It is extremely loud. And I don't think that that is on intention, because there appears to be something rattling inside of the case, and I'm going to go look for it. And if I'm going to take it apart, why not let you come along? The thing is, I think it's not cheap, but it is very cheaply made. I've seen a few things in there that I personally don't like from a safety perspective. For example, if this thing starts losing water, there's no drain hole on the bottom of the case, but there are a lot of power wires going along the bottom of the case, so they would be getting a good soaking. And things like that, there are cables attached to water tubes, just basic stuff that gives me the heebie-jeebies. And maybe I'll rework some of that. I don't think I can do a lot about it. Maybe I'll just drill a hole in the bottom of the case, so if it ever springs a leak, the water is going to run out of the machine and it doesn't have to rise that high. Because if this thing was well manufactured and it would start pumping its liquid into its inside, you could actually get a lot of water in there, and well, things like that. So let's tear into it. Okie dokie. So let's have a good look inside of here. It sure did put up a fight. There were 2 screws that were broken, and I couldn't get them out. With a bit of force I could. But yeah, actually it doesn't look that bad looking from the side here. It's all pretty flimsy, but it does get its rigidity when it's all put together. So I suppose this here is the ambient temperature sensor. Which is mounted to a cooling pipe. That doesn't really make sense. And down here, this is my issue, and I can see that right away now. This here is the mount for the pump, and that appears to be freely rattling around. And yeah, that just have to make sure that that doesn't rattle. And the noise issue should be fixed. That's a strange way of mounting this. So there's a number of cables in here. Power supply, the regulator unit. Oh, it's a thermostat. So this has two sensors. One sensor goes into the water container, and the other one is mounted out here. I'm not sure that I like this. I'm probably going to put this somewhere where it gets more ambient air. Yeah, so you didn't see any of that, huh? Let's fix that. Let's give it another tour. This here's the water container, which is with some thermal insulation. Not a lot, it's just some very simple foam, but I think that will be okay. There's a compressor back here, which is attached to the big heat exchanger, and the outlet from that heat exchanger goes into another heat exchanger inside the water tank, which then cools the water. This is pretty efficient. There's not a lot of plumbing, but I suppose that's enough. There is a drain to the back. Curiously, the drain is not the lowest thing here. And the other thing that I'm seeing is they chose to use silicone on all of the tubing, and there's tons of silicone inside the tubes. Also, they're like using 3 different materials. This here is silicone tube, this here is a PVC tube, this back here is silicone again, but a different type. And the pump is attached by a cable tie. It's held on with a cable tie with a very large silicone tube here. Well, I suppose it's supposed to be cheap, but that's an odd use of materials, to say the least. Yeah, what I really don't like is that they use the tubing to hold on to power cables. you really shouldn't do that. Also, all the power cables are routed on the bottom of the machine. I don't think that there are any connectors here. All of the connectors have been moved upwards, which is good. But just in case this thing would really have a big problem and all the water would spill inside here, there's no drain hole on the bottom of the machine, and it's not the safest thing. And looking at the other side, this here is the compressor. It's not the biggest compressor that I've seen, but it's decently sized. It doesn't have a power figure on it. But it doesn't look that bad. And judging from all the tubing work here, this here is a rework unit. The old units had a problem with vibration from the compressor breaking some of the tubes, and it would then leak all of its coolant over time. And they've addressed that. But I don't think I'm going to have a lot of issues with the compressor running all the time, because my basement workshop is pretty cool anyway. It's just to keep the temperature in the laser tube about 2 to 3 degrees below what I've got as ambient temperature. So I'm going to go fix the pump so it doesn't rattle anymore. The fix is done, and it was really simple. I just took some of this elastic material, and I was able to wrap this around the pump exactly once without taking it out. It just it fit right into the gap between pump and the hole down here. And now the pump can't go anywhere, and it is still somewhat flexible, so I'm pretty sure that will do it a lot of good. And I was hunting down some other things. I did in the end move the ambient temp sensor down here. The air intake is right in front of here, so this will be getting a lot of the ambient air, and it will not be against one of the tubes that are used for cooling, and that should fix that. And apart from that, there's not a lot that I'm going to do. I'll just leave it the way it is for now. If it makes any problems or if it acts up, I will change stuff and move things about. I found out why this here is a PVC tube. This here is the tube that is actually used as the indicator window. So it just goes from the drain back to the top of the tank, and the level of water in the tank will be reflected in what is seen in the back here. So that is why they went for a clear tube here, so you could see the water level that is inside of the machine. By the way, the machine right now is filled with distilled water, and I'm just rinsing it. I'm just using it for half an hour or an hour or so, and then I'm just going to rinse it out to make sure that I don't have any contaminants in here. And then for using it with the laser, I'm going to use distilled water again. I was planning on using purified osmosis water, but I can't get any. It's sold out everywhere. So I'm going to go with the distilled water, and I am going to add some antifreeze just to give the water a really visible color. So if I have any spills or stuff, I want to know what type of water that is right away. And that's the way to go. Also, there are chemicals in there that make sure that the aluminium from the coils in here can't react with any copper or brass that might be in any of the fittings or in parts of the tube. So I suppose that will take care of that too. Also, they have some wetting agents and whatever. They make water a lot better than it is all the way on its own. So let's just try and use some of that. Yeah, I'm gonna put it back together now. And well, maybe we could just test it while it's open, just not reach inside. So no open connectors here. What the hell? Oh, there's an open connector on the back of this, which is the connection to the fuse. Okay, you don't want to touch the back of that or get water on it. Maybe I'm going to put some insulation on top of there. Okay, so this is going to be loud. And that's it running. So this here should be the ambient temperature sensor. That's the compressor running, and it is a lot quieter now. Before the pump running, only the pump, it was like a table saw. It was incredibly loud. And it's already cooled down. Very nice. The front doesn't have that much to show for, but we got the front display, which displays the water temperature. We've got an indicator light for normal, and we've got an alarm, and the alarm will sound if there's no water flow or if there's an error with the management of the cold water, if it is too warm or if it can't cool down. So that's it running. We can trip the alarm. This is going to be really loud. I'm just going to put my finger on here. That's the alarm, and we can just clear that. So yeah, that's it for the water chiller. Let's put it back together and get it rigged for the laser. Well, I just drained the whole machine, and I don't know how well this picks up, but there's a ton of crap that was in the machine. Wow, there's really a lot of stuff down in the bucket. So I'm happy that I drained it. That was a good thing. All right, so let's put it back together now. There we go. So just to clarify this, This is a Chinese CW 5000 water chiller. But this is actually a clone of the original Chinese CW 5000 water chiller. It actually seems that even the Chinese themselves are not safe from other Chinese companies creating duplicates of their products, which is it's funny and sad, because there's a lot of invested IP in a machine like that, but for something that is so commonplace as a compressor-based cooling solution, it is actually very simple to just copy it and create a clone. So these are available at a lot of different prices. Like I said, I bought the cheap one, the really cheap one. I think this was 313 euros, delivered from Germany. So it was a really attractive price. But the risk is always that you get one of those machines that don't last long. But of course they come with a full warranty, and there's definitely not going to be any problem claiming that. But it has to be said, this machine does feel solid when it's put together. I've actually seen a lot worse, and I've worked on worse, and apart from the screeching noise it made when I got it, it's still a pretty nice machine. It would have been a problem if I couldn't have fixed it. There are a few warnings on here, like caution, wash the filter gauze every 15 to 30 days to keep good cooling performance. That is probably not the worst idea, depending on where you're operating the machine. If you've got a pretty clean workshop, then I think you can keep it running for longer. But if you're working on it and you've got it running 24/7, then that is probably a pretty good idea. The other label on the top of here is pretty weird. It says caution, prohibited, anhydrous boot. I think they mean to say, caution, do not operate this machine without water inside. But anhydrous boot definitely sounds better. I'm pretty sure that you don't want to remove these screws too often. Yep, I've got one that is busted already. So there's no water in here now. We can also add the side covers. They're pretty simple, but simple and effective does it for me any day. All right, let's get some water. So we want to get to the point where it shows on the indicator back here, which I didn't show you yet. But we can do that now. So there is a little indicator right in the back of here. So let's add some more, and if you see anything moving there, tell me. Oh. There we go, we're up to normal, and I am going to stop filling now, because we still have to add the antifreeze part, and that's a whole lot too. So I'm using pretty much standard antifreeze. I was thinking about using the expensive stuff, which is rated for aluminium motorcycle engines and all of that, but in the end that was sold out too. And I don't have a funnel. Why don't I have a funnel? That's gonna be fun. No. Yeah, that is not working at all. So if I don't have a funnel, I am just going to try and make an even greater mess. Oh. There we go. Oh, I know this is a cheap trick, but apparently it works. I'm just going to let all of this siphon in there. So there's a lot of different how-tos around what you can do and what you can use. Some people use the same chemicals that they use for water-cooled PC. Others tell you to use the stuff that you have in your waterbed. Then again, people will tell you that you get the best results if you use the chemicals that you have in your solar setup. I don't know what the best stuff is, but when my laser was delivered, it was actually completely filled with what appeared to be antifreeze. So I suppose they used it when testing the machine, and so I just assume that it is at least not inappropriate to use it. So let's read the gauge, and it is full. Well, it says it's full, and I need to remember now when putting it over to the laser that it's probably 7 to 8 kilograms heavier than it was before, which I suppose I'm going to notice. So let's get her set up. So I decided to give it another test before taking it to the machine, and yeah, I think the pump is still pretty loud. I had hoped for an entirely silent pump, and maybe come time I might try to do a rework on that to get that to work. It just went through an entire cooling cycle, and I was pretty happy with that. I'm keeping an eye on it running now. So basically there's just a short piece of tube in the back here that just runs right through it, right back to the inlet, and yeah, that water is nice and cool, and I think that everything is working the way I'd expect it. So I'll have to figure out how this thermostat works, how to set it, how to set the different temperatures that I want to have. It does have different modes, and yeah, I'll just have to work through it. So that's pretty interesting. It says it's 23 degrees in this room, which could actually be true. All right, let's turn it off and take it over to the laser. Ah, that is silent. So, hello and welcome back. It's done. The water chiller is now a part of my setup, and it did not go as smoothly as I had hoped, but that was mostly my fault. So I did have some problems getting the setup for the temperature controller correctly, which is set through the front panel, and for some reason it just didn't want to work for me, but all of a sudden it did. I don't know what happened there. I was able to get the temperature set at 16 degrees Celsius, which is probably the lowest that I should go, but I don't have the issue of the whole setup getting too warm in here, because my basement workshop hardly sees any temperatures over 21 to 22 degrees, even in the hottest of summers. So I can go with a pretty low temperature, and I will not have too much temperature difference in the tube, risking to crack it. The second thing that I had some problems setting up was the temperature hysteresis of the controller. It is set to 16 degrees, so the cooler will turn on at 16.8. The active cooling will turn off at about 15 point something, but then it basically spends all the pressure that it has built up in the compressor to keep cooling until all the active compressed refrigerant has been used, and that brings the temperature down to about 14 degrees, which I suppose is lower than I'm willing to go. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to measure the temperature at the water inlet of the laser. Maybe this still works out because I do have some temperature drop getting the water over there. In any case, it's working now, and it fits quite nicely into the little recess that I have here, and I really like it. After fixing the pump location, this thing is reasonably quiet. It is not super quiet. It's not as quiet as I had hoped it would be, but it works. That's okay. And the whole setup with the laser is also working. All the tubing that I'm using worked out. What I will need to do is I want to move the air pump closer to the compressor, just so I have all my tubes closely together. Right now, if I pull the machine forward just to work on the back of it, or to get something out of the cupboards behind it, I do need to pick up the air pump. That's kind of a problem. But apart from that, I'm really super happy. I did notice something, but I'm pretty sure that this has to do with the laser running in itself. I made a lot of these little signs, and yeah, guess what kind of a car my wife is driving. And I noticed that when I was starting out, I could do these at 20 millimeters per second, and after about, I don't know, 6 to 7 hours of using the laser, I had to go down to 15 millimeters. Now, this could be normal run-in of the laser, or this could have had something to do with it heating up for the first time. I don't know. And I checked all of my mirrors, they're all clean. The optics are also clean. I did find a little bit of debris in the laser head, in the lower lens that is focusing on the outlet, and I'm not sure that that debris was there when I started working with it, so could be that I have some more metal shavings or plastic pieces that just found their way into there and got loose. But I've cleaned everything, and now that it's clean, it actually works pretty nice, and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to start using it more. I'm going to experiment with the speeds and powers that I can use. Up to now, I've never driven the laser more than 70%. And the next thing I'm looking into is installing an ampere meter, but I don't know where, because most of the surface down here is already taken up. I am not sure that I want to put a huge hole right in the top of here. Maybe I'll put it back here, but that would also mean that I have to get some tools to do the drilling off the holes, because you do need a 38mm hole, and that is quite big. So I'm looking into that right now, or I might just try to use a clamp meter for a start. Not sure about that. Yeah, so this is day 9 of Laser Adventures. It is also day 10 because it's after midnight now. It did take me a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I'm happy with the result, and that's the important thing. And I'm just gonna keep continuing, and I'm gonna look into what I can make with the laser. Oh yeah, there were a couple of questions if I had tried acrylic yet, and I don't know if you can really see this because there's not a lot of light here, and this doesn't focus. So I'll show this another time. I did try some acrylic engraving and cutting, and it works like a charm. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.